All right, so let's get into it. This video is going to be about how to live in Airbnbs as opposed to traditional renting or like having a lease. I've been living in Airbnbs for the past year, but I've also been doing it by living in a different state each month. We're gonna get into 3 separate topics when it comes to this video. First is how much does it actually cost? And I've seen other videos mention this as well, but I actually have 2 dogs. Here they are, and they will significantly increase the cost of doing this lifestyle. So we'll get into the prices I paid and also like what you could expect to pay if you don't have dogs. Second is the step-by-step of how to find the right Airbnb. So I saw other videos that kind of talk about it, but they don't show you step-by-step how to do it. So we're actually gonna go onto Airbnb and I'm gonna show you my screen, and we're actually gonna try to find a decent Airbnb. The last is what to pack. So because you're living in a different state each month or living in an Airbnb, you have a completely different packing list than what you would do if you're going to Airbnb on vacation. So we're gonna get into what to pack, how to find the right host, and the price. So by the time you're done watching this, you'll know exactly how to live this lifestyle. Also, if you're meeting me for the first time, I'm Faith. I'm a relatively new channel as of posting this, and I make videos on productivity, personal development, and lifestyle like this one. So if you're interested in seeing more content like this, leave a comment below and I'll talk more about my experiences, and if you have any questions, I'll gladly answer them so that way you can actually start living this lifestyle sometime in 2021 or whenever you're watching this. When talking about the average price that you're gonna pay, you're gonna get really different answers depending on if you're staying at an entire place, a private room, an apartment, a house. Like there's so many factors that go into this. So I'm gonna list all my prices that I paid here. Some of you are probably looking at this price table and you're like,
literally, what? Buy? I cannot live this lifestyle. It is too expensive.
But hear me out, because this is for an entire house and a yard and everything else. So we're gonna get into the price ranges for these same areas that I lived in, but when it wasn't an entire house and if it was an apartment instead. The price ranges for the exact same cities that I stayed in with my prices, but for an apartment and for a shared room. As you can see, the smaller your place and the less picky you are compared to me, the cheaper price you will pay. So it would actually be cheaper to do this as opposed to traditional renting, depending on, the way your fees, the security deposit, all of that are set up. So on average, for what I paid, if I was staying somewhere by myself, I'm probably gonna pay between $2,000 to $2,500 a month, depending on the city. If I'm paying for this with my boyfriend, it's probably gonna be also between like the $2,000 to $4,000 range. Think about whatever you would need in terms of space and then decide from there what you need to budget and save per month in order to live this lifestyle. Now that we know the average price of what the Airbnbs themselves cost, here are some ancillary fees that we had to pay for on top of that. So first is a storage unit, which we'll get into in the next section here where we talk about how to do this lifestyle, but you have to have a storage unit for your things. And what we paid for that was $125 per month. I don't remember the size. And in our case, this was in San Francisco, so the prices of everything are just extremely expensive there. Like to put it in perspective, the $4,000 a month we paid in rent prior to doing this lifestyle was for a 1-bedroom apartment. What? And so this lifestyle is much cheaper because now we pay for the same price-ish, but we get a much bigger house. Next, you're gonna have to pay associated pet fees. Not every Airbnb will charge you pet fees, and this pet fee does range as well. Like I've had some say it's only $50 for each dog per month because we had 3. Some have said it's just like $200 for all of the dogs. So this number is really gonna vary by host, but if you are doing this with dogs, do expect to pay a fee. And honestly, aside from the monthly cost for the storage unit and for the dog pet fees, there's literally no other fees that have to go into this that I've personally come across. Everything is included in your Airbnb price. So if you have these prices here, and you have no other fees, it could be cheaper for you to do this as opposed to renting or doing a traditional lease. First, you have to get rid of your lease if you're in one, or just wait until your lease ends. That's actually the option you probably should do, because when you're trying to buy out of a lease, you have to pay X amount months per rent sometimes, and it can get really expensive. So I'd recommend waiting till your lease ends. Second, get a storage unit, and ideally find one for a reasonable price, under $100, and hold most of your things there. We're gonna get into packing the third part of this video, or just click the time code below, and from there you'll know what needs to go on the storage unit versus what doesn't. So my next step would be book this place 2 months in advance, and then that's how it would be every month going forward. So for example, our lease ended at the end of April, so beginning of May. Back in March when quarantine started, we went ahead and booked a place in May because we knew that our lease was ending at the end of April. So that way we would just move to the Airbnb as opposed to kind of being in some weird isolation for a week, not having a lease or an Airbnb somewhere. So now I have my computer pulled up. We're going to do an example of what it looks like when you book 1 month in advance versus 2 months in advance. And we're gonna start talking about filtering down. First, let's compare the options that are available when you add in all of the filters you need, which we'll get into what filters you need when doing a monthly stay, and compare 1 month from now versus 2 months from now, and you'll see usually that there's gonna be 3x the amount of options, and this is also gonna vary on what city you're staying in too. So at the moment, I'm currently in Austin, Texas, so I'm gonna be using Austin, Texas as my example city to show you this whole process. Let's go to Austin, and something to know: in order to do this, you have to stay at this place for at least 28 nights. And if you don't do that, so let's say I wanted to start this on the 1st and I just want to stay here the entire month of February, it will tell me that I need to stay at least 1 or 2 more days in order to get the discount. If you stay for 28 nights, you will get monthly discounts. If you stay less than 28 nights, you will not get a monthly discount. You will pay the daily rate for 28 days and it will become way more expensive. If I change this to 1 more day, now it's $2,400. That's $500 savings from staying 1 more night. So if you could take away one thing from this video, make sure that you are staying somewhere 28 nights to get the monthly discounts, or else you are not doing yourself a favor. Now let's talk about the filters that you need to have on. So first, you can do this option if you want. I feel like the results are about the same regardless, and sometimes I've actually had less results pop up by using this, so up to you, but I'm actually going to keep it off. In terms of type of place, this is going to vary per person. I usually stay in entire places. If you are looking for something cheaper, like an apartment, that would still fall under an entire place. So we're going to do entire place, and here, because I'm specifying the 28 night rule, it's going to start to show me prices based on monthly price ranges as opposed to daily. So now with this monthly price, you can see about how much it's going to cost per month in this area. Now that you know the difference between the monthly and nightly pricing, just set whatever you're willing to pay. So I know in my case, if my boyfriend's staying with me, that I'm willing to pay up to $4,000 a month. So I'm gonna just do this price here. Ideally, we're gonna pay less than that, of course, but that way we have all of our options. Next is, I have a set that I personally like, so I know I want it to have 2 bedrooms, so that way if one of us has a meeting or something for work, then there's a separate bedroom for us to take meetings at. So I will add 2 bedrooms here. Next, you want to make sure you have a kitchen, because you're not going to be able to afford to eat out every day. And if you can't afford to eat out every day, can I have some money? So you want to make sure there's a kitchen, and you want to make sure that there's a washer and a dryer, unless you want to go to the laundromat to do your clothes. Obviously, you want it to have Wi-Fi. Most of the places will, like we can see here, it went from 42 to 41 options, so most places are going to have Wi-Fi. If you want, you can select dedicated workspace. What this means is there is like a desk in the home that you can put your computer on and you can work from. Whereas like a normal Airbnb, especially one that's more of a vacation Airbnb, probably doesn't have this. But as you can see, this just narrowed my options from 28 to 41. So sometimes I check this, but most of the time I leave it off because I want to have more options to look at. And I'm willing to work from like my kitchen table, right? Like I don't necessarily need a desk. But if you're the kind of person, let's say you do something that requires you to write and you need, like, I don't know, for some reason you need a desk, then you should check that option. But I'm gonna leave it off for this video. And really that's about it. So for property types, if you care about size, here's the feature set that you should probably use. If you care more about saving money, then yeah, focus on your apartments, your lofts, your guest suites. These are gonna usually be much cheaper options. Usually these bigger options are going to get booked out first, and then you're going to see the smaller things like the apartments and everything else get booked. So because I'm basing this off of my experience, I'm gonna do houses and things that I would personally stay in. This is the set here that usually I would use. And again, if you want smaller options, and if you want to save money, then basically everything that I left unchecked is going to be your smaller options. Of course, you can still find things like townhouses for a reasonable price. Obviously, I want pets allowed. And look, it went from 10 stays to 1 stay. So congrats. Having pets and trying to do this lifestyle is extremely difficult. So just keep that in mind, and we'll get into more dog nuances and everything else later in this video. But if you have dogs, yeah, that's why you need to book 2 months in advance, because these 300 plus options that were available after adding all of these filters, now you have one option. And again, this is me booking for the month of February, and as of filming, it's like January 30th, so that's also why. But if we were doing this 2 months in advance, we would see significantly more options here. So let's say we want this to start over the weekend so we can drive here over the weekend, and we want to stay here until April. Now we have 8 stays instead of 1 stay, which is still a really small amount, granted that I have all these filters on. As you can see, you're usually gonna have way more options to book from if you book 2 months in advance. That's probably the second most important point of this video. First is stay 28 nights, so that way you get monthly discounts. 2 is book it 2 months in advance if you wanna get a really good deal. Now that we've got all the filters on, we're gonna actually go into how do you know what's the best place to stay in. And this is actually not the best example because there's only 8 stays. So let's say we wanna do this from March 1st to now. We might see more options become available. Yeah, we have 11 stays now instead of 8 because we just took out the February option. So of these 11 stays, how do you know which one is the best one to go with? So first, of course, look at the price. Can you afford it? I mean, you already have the filters on, but I've seen instances where like, okay, this is $3,600, and if you've used Airbnb before, then you know that there's gonna be like cleaning fees and service fees, things like that are included. Like now this is above my price range at $4,400 a month, so I actually can't afford it. And if I notice that this is happening consistently, so this is $3,400 and then now it's $4,200, I can start to pick up that, oh, maybe I actually need to lower my price per month because all the fees are making it out of my price range. So now maybe I know I need to spend $3,500 a month, and then it's probably gonna, with the fees, be around $4,000. So let's see how the price changes. Now we can see that it was, you know, this $2,700 a month, and now it's $3,300. So now it's actually in my price range. So if you're noticing that the houses are becoming too expensive, then you probably need to reduce the price range here, so that way when the fees are tacked on, it's still under your monthly budget. So when I did that though, you'll notice there are like literally no options within Austin, and Austin's again a complicated example because it is a really desirable place to stay right now. And even when I tried to book this place, there were like maybe 3 options left. So that's kind of normal. I might potentially move to a different area, one that might have more options, just so you can see. So we're gonna use Santa Fe as the example. Now that I've added all these filters, I know that I could probably stay in 4 of these houses. Now I'm gonna look at all 4 of these houses and compare them. Year 1, looking at the reviews, just confirm that they have good reviews. Second, look at the description, make sure that there's nothing that would make them not a candidate, like maybe they didn't have a yard, or maybe they have cameras, or whatever that deal breaker is for you. This is the third main point of this video. There are always little tidbits of information that the host will write in the description that you will have wished you read before booking it. What I'm gonna look for though at a high level when reading the description is, does this have a yard? Does she mention anything about Wi-Fi? And does she have any cameras? Third, look at the photos, like do you actually wanna stay there? And then fourth, we're gonna go back to the reviews, but we're actually going to filter them based on things that I care about. So in my situation, I care a lot about Wi-Fi speed because I'm in Zoom meetings often. I need to have fast Wi-Fi. And so what you saw me do just now was I clicked on show all reviews, and I'm gonna search for Wi-Fi. So this one doesn't actually say anything. And basically what I'm trying to do here is see if there is any sort of indication of whether or not the Wi-Fi is good or bad. And if there isn't one, then I'm going to message the host if I'm really interested in staying there. There's an option to message the host before you book it. Now let's say I only have 2 listings left and I'm not sure which I want to stay with. The best way to do this is using a thing called Hood Maps. It's at hoodmaps.com. I can also link it in the description below if you're interested to do this for your own city, because it's just hilarious to do in general. It'll give you some idea of what is this area like, and you'll see at the bottom here, is it more rich people? Is it touristy? Like, what is this area like? So that way, whenever you're comparing options, if you know you want to stay in a place that's more local, since you're staying there for a month, then you can pick a house in Santa Fe, Austin, wherever you're staying, in a more hipster area. Or if you want to stay somewhere that's more touristy because you want to be around all the cool attractions, then look for areas that are in the touristy section. I highly recommend using this, and this will usually narrow down the options a lot as well. So using all the steps prior, you went through, read your descriptions, read your reviews, looked at all the photos, you compared on Hood Maps, you've done all the things, and now you actually want to book it. This is a pro tip. If you have a credit card that has travel points, book this on your credit card. And you're probably thinking, why would you do that? That's so much money. Just pay it off within the same month. So like as if you were paying your rent, but you get all these travel points because Airbnb is a travel site, or at least that's how it's worked for me. And so now I have like over 100,000 points and something like that, where I can get free flights later whenever quarantine is over. I can now use the money that I paid towards Airbnb to buy flights later. So I highly encourage, if you have it, or if you have the option to buy a credit card or sign up for a credit card, that's what's worked well for me. I'm no credit card expert, but that's what I would recommend doing, is just putting it on a credit card in general, and this really boosts your credit score. You already know about the prices you're gonna have to pay, the steps in order to find the place, or maybe you've even already booked a place. Now, what do you even pack, okay? This is something that has been a lot of trial and error for me, so hopefully you can speed up your process and learn from all my mistakes when it comes to packing for Airbnb. First, don't pack anything of importance to you. If this is of importance, then you should probably put it in your storage unit. And when I say importance, I mean things that you can live without that are important. So a great example of this is that I had this childhood pillow, and I had it since birth, like at the hospital, and I lost it at the very first Airbnb on this entire journey, and I lost it, and I've had it for 24 years. So if this is something that is important, but you don't necessarily need it, so any sort of keepsakes or any important documents that you don't think you're gonna need, put them in the storage unit. Do not bring them with you. When you're constantly traveling, it's very easy for things to get lost, and you will probably regret it, because I totally regret bringing mine and some other items that got lost along the way too. Second is to pack for literally any kind of weather. So this is also a mistake that I made, because when I first started to do this, I never thought that quarantine was gonna last this long. So I only packed for the summer, because again, I started this in May. I thought, oh, I'll just be doing this for 3 or 4 months. So I only packed summer clothes. Now, a year later, and it's January, I had like no winter clothes packed. Therefore, I'm wearing like t-shirts and shorts all the time, even though it's like 30 degrees outside. And pretty much pack for any season. I highly encourage packing what is called a capsule wardrobe. Here's a quick reel of all the things that are going inside my suitcase clothing wise. This is the majority of my clothing right here, even though it might look like a lot in the grand scheme of like the average closet, it's really not. So I have like maybe at most 10, but I think less than that in terms of shirts, long sleeves and short sleeves here, that I wear often. So most of them are pretty basic, solid color t-shirts like this, because it'll match year round with anything that I need. So I'd highly recommend getting things like that. Then I have some basic long sleeves here, mostly solid color, because if it gets cold outside, and these are actually things that I acquired mostly along the way, because when I was planning this, it was in the summer. So all I brought were short sleeve shirts. I didn't have a lot of long sleeve options. And then you want to bring some like jackets of some sort as well. So I have like a workout jacket, right? But then I also have things like hoodies and thick jackets as well. Then you have your jeans, and then you have shorts and leggings. That's pretty much it for clothing. You want to keep it pretty simple, because what you'll notice is if you do a lot of online shopping, which is also pretty hard to do during this whole lifestyle, is you'll start to acquire more things over time, and your suitcase is going to become a lot more full, and you're like, how did it become more full? It's because you bought whatever off of Everlane or Fashion Nova or Amazon that has to fit in your suitcase now. So try to keep it minimal and understand that throughout this process you're probably going to gain more clothes unintentionally, especially if you only pack for like the summer like I did, and then you end up needing to buy winter clothes and now you need extra space in your suitcase. So keep the clothes to a minimum. Now, aside from clothes, because that's the pretty obvious one, you know that you're going to need clothes. Everything else I'm about to mention is like pretty specific to doing a monthly Airbnb compared to a vacation like weekend Airbnb. Next, you're going to need a spice box and some cooking supplies. Usually an Airbnb is going to have the basics here. It's going to have salt, pepper, olive oil, maybe like a cooking spray, and that's usually about it. And so if you're wanting to actually cook, of course, and not eat out every day, then you need to bring some of the cooking supplies that you have at your current place with you. Or if you don't, if you're like maybe already doing this lifestyle, then go ahead and buy some and put it in a box. You can see my box here. I have a wide assortment of things because I like to cook often. So I have all the vinegars that I need and oils. I have some baking supplies like baking soda, baking flour, or whatever it's called, baking powder. And it's a mixed bag of things that I know I'm gonna consistently use across recipes. Now you're gonna need some cleaning supplies, and you're probably thinking, you're paying a cleaning fee. Don't they already have cleaning stuff in your Airbnb? No, they do not. Well, sometimes they do. It really depends. If they're using a cleaning service, usually the cleaning service isn't going to keep things in the Airbnb. By things, I mean like the brooms, the vacuums, the materials involved. Usually it's just going to have like rags, paper towels, things like that. It's not really going to have a lot. So something that we bring with us to every Airbnb is a vacuum cleaner, and we bring some basic like countertop cleansing stuff. Next, you're gonna need some medical supplies, and you're probably thinking, why would I need that? That's so dumb, nothing would ever happen. Let me tell you that I somehow managed to cut off like 90% of my fingertip here while I was at an Airbnb, and I had no band-aids, I had no first aid kit. Sometimes the Airbnbs will have a first aid kit, sometimes they don't. I've seen it be like 50-50 chance. And so I'd highly encourage for you to bring your own medical supplies because you never know what could happen. And you know, if you occasionally get sick, like a head cold, period cramps, whatever it is, you would like to have a bag there. You can see my bag here. I have various things like Advil, digestion pills, like just basic things that'll happen. Of course, if you're doing this for a year, you're not gonna feel 100% year round. So you should definitely bring something like that. And of course, Band-Aids. Lesson learned there. Do keep some on standby at all times. Next, you have groceries. Now, groceries is a pretty complicated one because you want to keep your groceries as light as possible whenever you're getting towards the end of your stay. You have your cold groceries and your warm groceries. So we'll go into warm groceries first, or I guess room temperature groceries, whatever. These are things like seeds and nuts and noodles, things that can sit in the countertop. You can get whatever here, of course, and just try to finish it before the end of the month and try to avoid buying groceries near like the last week of your stay because then there's less things for you to have to transport. If food is one of the more complicated things to transport because it spills very easily and then it can ruin all your other things like clothes, packages, whatever else you're carrying. And particularly liquid room temperature or liquid cold things, just liquid things in general are a mess to travel with, so try to keep these to a minimum. For what I use to help travel with all of these things are some refrigerator bags, which you can see here. I usually put an ice pack in them, even if the thing is room temperature and it's liquid, because these things tend to hold the liquid within them. And if you're using like a box, let's say, even if it's room temperature and it spills, then it can, soak in the box and soak into everything else. Whereas these bags tend to do a better job at holding the liquid. And I normally use them for all of my cold things, which leads me to traveling with cold things. You want to try to keep things in a fridge as opposed to a freezer, because whenever you get freezer items, and let's say you have to travel with them to the next Airbnb, you're not putting them in a freezer whenever you're traveling, you're putting them basically in a fridge with an ice pack, and so the quality of your frozen items tends to not be as good. Of course you still can, and maybe if you use like a Yeti cooler or a really nice cooler, that this would not apply to you, but in my case, I don't really have the space in my car for a Yeti cooler. I just use these bags and it works fine. Usually the things will stay cold. Basic ice packs are super cheap. You can get them at the grocery store or on Amazon, and they'll usually stay frozen for the duration of the drive to my next Airbnb. Next, you're going to want to bring your work setup. So this is only applicable if you're going to be doing working from home. If you're like a traveling nurse or something like that, this might not be as relevant to you, but you're going to want to bring your external monitor if you're using one, obviously an HDMI cable for it, and your laptop, of course, basically any sort of technology that you need in order to do your job. So an example for me might be, my external monitor, my cables to use that, and now I have this giant ring light and this camera and all this other equipment that I'm having to travel with to make YouTube videos. So this will vary per person. The last thing that came to mind when it comes to packing is workout gear. So this is going to be, your dumbbells or barbells, whatever you're trying to bring, but obviously keep it to a minimum. All I have with me is a weighted jump rope, 2 sets of dumbbells, and a yoga mat, and that's it. Because again, you're limited to whatever the size of your car is, and if you don't have a lot of space, then don't even bring workout equipment. Just do like body weight exercises or something. That's going to be the easiest way to bring more space back into your car. After you add all your clothing, your cooking supplies, cleaning supplies, dog supplies, literally all these supplies that I just mentioned to you, your car is going to look something like this. So it's slap full of all of this, and me and my partner, we drive separately to Airbnb, so we have more space. So his truck is also slap full of whatever he's got, and I have all of my stuff as well. And it's still sometimes almost like minimalist living, because you still might need more things that you just can't get because you need more space. So I'd highly encourage, if you can do this with somebody else, it might be a little bit easier for you. And if you don't have dogs, of course, they're not going to take up the entirety of your back seat. So you actually will have a lot more space and probably could do this by yourself if you wanted to. You really have options here. But again, as you can tell from the video of my car, that there just isn't a lot of space to hold a lot of things, but you still will realize that you need a lot of things throughout the month that aren't going to be available at your Airbnb. And that might be the one con of it compared to a rental, is that with the rental, or like a lease I should say, you have everything there. You have all your furniture, you have all your items. When you're doing an Airbnb, you just don't have all of that, right? Now that you know the price, how to actually find the Airbnbs, the packing list, you have literally everything you need in order to start this lifestyle. But if you have any other questions that I didn't actually answer, feel free to comment them below and I will try to help you out. I would love for as many people as possible to try doing this, because it actually is a lot of fun, and I think it's a great way to find a place to live. Let's say you've been in your hometown for a long time, or you've been living somewhere for a long time and you want to try out something new. This is a great way to try out a city before actually committing and signing a lease there and having to pay all the moving costs. So try it out. I think it would be a lot of fun, and it would give you a lot of guidance on what you're looking for in a place to live, which could be a whole separate video. And if you found this video valuable, it'd be really great if you gave it a thumbs up or subscribed. I'm obviously a new channel as of posting this, and it'll help me figure out what content I need to make or that you would find interesting. Good luck!